I-bonds are one of our favorite investments. And if you haven't made your investment this year in I-bonds, there's a reason to do it before Halloween. Why is that? In this episode, you're going to learn why that is, what you can do to take advantage of this opportunity. And also, we're going to talk about how old-fashioned cocktails fit into this whole discussion. So on today's episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning, I'm John Scheer. I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mermel. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. And John, before we get going on old fashions and I-bonds, let's remind everybody to subscribe. It helps YouTube find us and helps us reach more people. So please subscribe.
That's right. And hey, I got excited talking about two of my favorite things. Talk about I-bonds, a great place to invest, and the old-fashioned cocktail, one of my favorite pre-dinner drinks. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. If people don't know, as we get ready to have to hit record here, Bridget and I talk about things, and you had a great idea. I'm really excited to kind of make these connections and look forward to hearing the discussion here. Let's start maybe with some of the details and some of the rubber meets the road thing. I-bonds are a great place to invest, right? It's treasury bonds that are tied with inflation, and there's a deadline coming up that people should be aware of, right?
Yeah, and the deadline is October 28th to ensure issuance by October 31st. So John, the interest rate on I-bonds right now, it's a 6-month interest rate and it's 9.62%. So it's tied to inflation, and so inflation's been high, but inflation is going down. So now starting November 1st, if you buy I-bonds, it will earn, I think, 6.46. They haven't announced a rate officially, but 6.4 to 6.5. So it's going down. So it's kind of last call. It's just like with like with an old fashioned, it's last call. Although obviously you can get an I-bond after, but it's a good time to help motivate you to go ahead and put money or fill up your I-bond before. Again, the date is October 28th.
So let me just jump in on that. Thanks for that explanation. And we've had several episodes that folks can go back and see some of our previous episodes on all the details of how I-bonds get calculated, what goes on. But sort of the rubber meets the road is, listen, the interest rate adjusts on May 1st and November 1st, right? And the adjustment here coming up this November is going to be lower than it is right now. Right now, you're getting 9.62. It's going to be something like 6.5 coming up.
Right.
So that's where this deadline comes in, right? Like, listen, if you haven't done your I-bonds, you haven't maxed out $10,000 per year to do it. And here I'm thinking, November 1st is when the rate changes, which is true. But I really appreciate you saying, listen, you got to get this done by October 28th, get it purchased to make sure it's all done before November 1st, right?
Right. And that's based on the information on the U.S. Treasury. It's called Treasury Direct website, because that's where you have to go to buy them.
That's great. So we got last call for the 9.62 bonds. That would be a kind of like the good old fashions, right? The brandy old fashions, last call for the brandies.
No, we're not talking brandy. We'll talk brandy versus whiskey at the end. Okay.
All right.
The next thing is that I want to make sure people understand that the website says that if you get a I-bond, if you put your money into I-bonds at the end of the month, so before October 28th, you get that 9.62 for the whole month. So you get it for like you put it in the 1st of October. And then you get the 9.62 for the next 5 months after that. Okay, so you've got 6 months at 9.62. And then it ticks down to what the new rate is, which is 6.4 something or 6.5, right? And so I just want to make sure that people understand. So it's like getting you just have like a delayed reaction. So you're still going to get the 6.4, which is still a great rate, but you'll get it after everybody that is buying that buys I-bonds after November 1st.
It sounds sort of like happy hour to me. Like buy one, get 1 month, get a discount on, right? You get credit for interest going back to October 1st if you buy them here before the end of the month.
Yeah, it's like we got to the party late, but
Yeah.
you still get in on all the fun.
But you still get to enjoy the old fashioned. I love it.
Yeah, another thing I want to bring up about I bonds that I think a lot of people don't think about is that the interest rate can't go below zero.
Mhm.
So a lot of times we've gotten a question on our channel about tips versus I bonds, and tips can go below zero. So they don't protect you against deflation.
Let me
Nobody
bring out the
cares about
jargon, please,
deflation
Sue.
until everybody cares about deflation. Okay.
So
Thank
is
you.
that a hot stock tip you're talking about?
No, you're right. This is jargon, please. TIPS stands for what?
Treasury inflation
Inflation
protected
protected.
securities.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so they're backed by the government, which is great, but they can go below zero. So that's how they're different than I bonds. So I bonds are kind of like a designated driver. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you've got that cushion, you don't have to worry about getting home. You're not an alcoholic. That would be good. And you got a designated driver.
I really appreciate bringing up, and sorry to call out the jargon police on you, but I want to make sure that viewers know that when you're talking about these treasury inflation protected things, tips, right? We throw that term around and you think, okay, what does that mean? So it sounds, and those are inflation in inflation protected bonds, right? They're tied with inflation, but that really key difference, those can fit a place in a portfolio, right? But different than the I bonds, because the I bonds can't go below zero with it. Right. That's really critical. And, nobody's been worried about deflation, too often around here, but that can be as scary a thing as inflation
or worse
on the other, or worse. Right. So,
yeah.
I was talking with some folks here. I was teaching a class in town on retirement. And one of the questions was something we were talking about I bonds, because I think it's a great place. People should think about these things, see if it fits into your portfolio, and, we were talking about, well, geez, what happened? Can they go down? No, they go to zero. Oh, geez. So there's zero is not a great rate if inflation goes away. And that's true, but zero is a pretty good place when other things are all going down, right? If everything else, and we're in an environment now, right, where stocks aren't doing very hot, obviously, bonds aren't doing so hot either. And zero can be a really good place to be, not exactly aligned with deflation, but along those same lines. Like, no, it doesn't feel like a benefit. Getting zero doesn't feel like a benefit, but in the right circumstances, it certainly can. That's a really important point.
A lot of people want security and safety with their investments. Like they want, especially if the times are tough. So that I bonds are great for that. Okay, so another awesome thing about I bonds, let's talk about who they're good for. Old fashions are not good for everybody. One group they're not good for is kids. Okay. However, I bonds are good for kids. All right. Especially, I would argue right now, if you're saving for kids' college, and especially like high schoolers, because of what you just talked about, the stock market, it's not doing great, and the bond market's not doing great either. But here you can $10,000, which is a lot for college savings. And you get a guaranteed interest rate, and there's some benefits to it. We've got a whole video about it. If you do use it for education, I bonds for kids are great right now.
I think it's a really smart point. I'm glad you brought that one up, Bridget. And in that, so often we think of 529 plans and college savings plans, and those things are a fit a role. They're awesome. But the benefit that so many times we lose track of is the benefit of those 529 plans is that the growth comes out tax-free. It's, sometimes we get to thinking where it's sort of like a magic bullet. Oh, I've got to put money in my 529 plan for college. Not necessarily. And when you're talking about being in high school, I love that. Listen, we've only got a few years left and we need this money, right? We've got a time horizon less than 5 years. We can't reliably invest in stocks, and there's not going to be a ton of growth. Here's a place, right, where you can get, 9% today, maybe 6%, tomorrow sort of thing, but some decent interest. And that it's not going below zero, right? What a great place to put those last dollars as you're getting ready to go into college.
Okay, so another thing this is when this is good for you is like when you've got an emergency fund. If you don't have an emergency fund, not as good for you.
Yeah. And part of the drawback with the ibonds, right? And is that, and
Yeah.
I think most people know, but you can't get to the money for a year. Right. So we had a client who was in a position they were paying for a wedding. And a year ago in May or whatever it was, he said, listen, buy an ibond, that's super. We got the interest rate last year, if I remember right, it was 3.5 or something percent. Now it's,
Great. Yeah.
and it was 7.5%, right? And then we knew that after May of next year in the June wedding, we needed that money. We had this money earmarked for just specifically for that purpose, right? So for when you have a definite time frame and it ties in with the idea of college, look, we know we're not going to need this money. This money is set aside for 3 years from now when your daughter goes to college. Perfect setup for that, but you have to have that emergency fund in the meantime. It's not in place of that, right? At least in the beginning.
Right. So, like old fashions aren't for somebody who has to do something right away.
Yeah,
They're
that's right.
better if you got a longer time horizon.
That's right.
Or you get time to sober up.
Yeah, they're pretty good before dinner, not so good for breakfast, right?
Right, exactly. Not too good, like too many of them. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is that it's a calendar year. So you can buy, I was just talking to a client about this yesterday, and they're like, this person was saying it's just 10,000. And I said, yeah, but you can be 10,000 for you, it can be 10,000 for your spouse. And then January 1st, it's a calendar year, 10,000. So
Right.
you can put another, so all of a sudden, all these add up to enough. There are other ways. If you're an optimizer and you're willing to go through extra hoops to even have more, there's ways you can do it, and you can explore it on the internet. And we talk about it a little bit. We like to keep it. This is what we think is great for most people. That's what this video about is, just your 10,000 a year. But my point here is that it's calendar year. So you can do some more in January.
That's right. And you do a couple of years of these, it starts to add up, right? 10,000 by itself isn't going to change the world, but you do it for a few years, suddenly you got $50,000 or $100,000 earning these interest rates, right? And it can be a pretty good deal. So,
and you don't have to put in all 10,000.
right.
So it's not an all or nothing kind of thing. You can put, I think the minimum deposit is $25 or $100.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go, if you don't have that much money and you need, emergency fund first, ibonds second. So if you don't have that much money to put in them, that's fine.
Yeah,
You
that's great.
you don't have to max it out. That's fine.
Well, I'll tell you what, I really wanted to get towards that brandy versus whiskey debate on old fashions, but I think we're at a great spot to wrap up here and put a bow on this. Think about ibonds. There's a deadline coming up. Pay attention to that. And again, this is Friends Talk Financial Planning. Both Bridget and I are members of the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. And if you like what we talk about here, and if you want to find a planner in your area that thinks in a similar way to that we do, check out acplanners.org.
And don't forget to subscribe.